Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink. We have quite a bit to get into here today. We have the Gopher hockey season on the horizon. Opening night is this Friday against Michigan Tech. We'll talk about that a little bit here. We also have a little bit of news in the Minnesota Wild world. Kirill Kaprizov, record-breaking deal. Joe Smith jumps in to talk that and really final roster thoughts as we close out the preseason. And we have a lengthy interview with Eddie Olczyk. Awesome guy. He probably sat there and talked with us for hours if we let him. And we did address the Kaprizov situation. We recorded with him a couple weeks ago. This has been banked for a bit. So leaving it in there because it's still interesting conversation, but obviously we'll be covering the positive side of that, the excitement around the new contract in our Minnesota Wild segment here with Joe Smith coming up. But let's kick it off. Gopher hockey. We're back. And there's no immense preview that I'm going to sit here and do for you today. We've had Bob Motzko on over the summer. Eric Vigo was on a few weeks ago and did a little bit of a proper preview. We had LJ Mooney on this summer when he's here for the World Junior Summer Showcase. So if you're looking for the deeper discussion around the Gopher hockey season that we are so close to kicking off, go check out all of those interviews. All available on your podcast feeds and on the SOTA POD YouTube channel if you just want the interviews. What I will say is this is a very interesting year. Gophers are coming in as a top 10 ranked team. They lost some very, very notable names. We all sat here and kind of hoped and wished that a couple of them might be convinced to stay. Jimmy Snuggerud, obviously the headliner. We all knew he was leaving. It is his time. He's already a top 6 forward in the NHL, and he's only going to make more of an impact moving forward. But you lose guys that you kind of lean towards thinking they'd leave because the teams are going to push them. But all of the guys I'm going to name moving forward are guys that still had room to grow and could have potentially benefited from another year in college. That said, if I was a 20-year-old kid and someone's waving millions of dollars in front of my face, who knows what I would do. So I do not second guess any of their decisions. Like, I support and respect all of them, but you got the Blackhawks boys, Sam Rinzel and Oliver Moore. Both have been getting a lot of looks in the preseason. Both also played in the Tom Kerber's Prospect Showcase. Both looking pretty interesting. But big losses with the two of them. We lose Matthew Wood to the Nashville Predators. We have a couple of graduates, of course, but those we all knew were going to happen. But the other signings, let's see, we had Chesley, of course, going and signing with Washington. That's one that I wasn't 100% sure how it would go, just because there's clearly not an immediate path to the NHL for him. But and the last one, the one that really caught me by surprise, was Connor Kurth. I thought he was going to come back and be a leader for this team this year. And again, the opportunity to go play pro hockey, whether it be in Tampa or Syracuse, it was just too much room to pass up. So that gets us to this year's team. I am very interested to see what the line combos look like, how Bob Motzko is deploying this crew in the opening weekend. A little bit of a tune-up, tinker, try things out, and make sure that we have everything squared and ready to go for a big matchup the following week with Boston College coming to town. The key players that I'm watching, we've got the leaders that are returning. What is Brody Lamb going to do? Is he going to show us the peak Brody Lamb that we saw several times throughout the season? Can we see that more consistently? Can we see him put the team on his back? And of course, Brody Zemer, this is a guy that, I don't know, you've all heard me swoon over him all season last year. The combination of skill, grit, just drive and determination, and that switch that gets flipped so quickly when he goes into FU mode and just decides he wants to take a guy's head off. Then we got the blue line, right? We got to talk about, obviously, a lot of departures if we're going to go off percentages on the blue line, but you still got big names. You got Luke Middlestat and Cal Thomas who are going to pave the way. And then the question is, between the newcomers, the rookies, the freshmen, and some of the returners from last year that were in and out of the lineup, who is going to really put their stamp early on and say, I need to be in the lineup every night, and here's the role that I fill? I'm going to have a lot more after this weekend to say about where I see some of that filling out and who I think long-term, regardless of what we necessarily see this weekend. I'm excited to just see how all this plays out. I don't really have much more to say other than get excited, because while this team lost a lot of players and we're not a top, 3 or 4 team like a lot of Gopher fans prefer, this is a team that's going to get overlooked a little bit. And I think they are going to be a rude awakening for the teams that choose to do that. And we've got a fun season ahead with really all the Big Ten teams being fairly competitive. We got one and a half exceptions there, but Penn State and Michigan State beefing up and bringing in several CHL notables ever since, of course, this August. Those players all became eligible to transfer and play NCAA hockey. It's going to be an interesting year to see how all of that works out. But even beyond that, the Michigans are going to be interesting. Ohio State has been a steady team that you don't want to play, really, the last couple of years. It's going to be a really fun season. I am excited and here for all of it. Plan on attending majority of the games in the press box, but of course, a late October due date for kid number 2 means that there will probably be a handful of games and weekends that I will not be able to get out and cover. But excited to be on the ride here with all of you. I hope any of the Minnesota Wild fans that are here listening tune in, support the Gophers, or hey, if you support the other Minnesota teams, I'm in the minority that I don't segregate. As long as they're not playing against the Gophers, I will pull for all the Minnesota teams. I just want to see someone from Minnesota win a natty, please, for the love of God. But for me, if they're playing head-to-head, Gophers every time. Here we go. But check back in next week. We'll have a lot more to talk about on that front. But for the time being, let's kick it over for some monumental news on the Minnesota Wild things with Joe Smith. It happened, Joe. We have now the richest contract in NHL history signed by one Kirill Kaprizov. How did this all come together?
Well, I think as Bill Guerin put it, good things happen to those who wait. And I think for Wild fans, it was too long of a wait, but these negotiations do take time. And there was never any indication, at least from Kirill's perspective, he wanted to leave. And there never any indications from the Wild side of the Fuse that they didn't want to keep him. So, difference was, I guess, $1 million difference from the offer he was given 3 weeks ago to the one now. A unique bonus structure, of course. But I think the biggest thing from today, obviously the money is one thing in a very high number, but him committing the next 8-9 years of his life or his whole rest of his career to play in Minnesota and is a signal and kind of a validation to what they're trying to build here. If he can believe, and he said today, one day it'll come when they'll make a playoff run and win a Stanley Cup. If he didn't believe that truly, he would not have signed here. He could have waited. He could have waited next summer, had many teams in no state income tax states with a better pedigree of winning the last 10 years. So he made the decision for the rest of his career to sign with Minnesota. So that should be the biggest takeaway for me, for the Wild fans, is this guy, the best player you've ever had, believes that something can happen here. $17 million is a lot, but the cap's going to go up, and this number won't look crazy ridiculous in 2 years. This number won't look crazy then. It looks big now, but it is very much big. But I think that's the indication there, and is that he feels there's a chance to win here. He's been happy since he got drafted. They treated him well. He likes the team, the core, the area, everything else about it. So that's a good sign if you're the Wild, because he's not a replaceable guy. And if he didn't sign, it would be devastating.
It absolutely would. And so now, obviously, the immediate reaction from Bill Guerin is obviously just like a sigh of relief. Once that fades, what does this mean now for him? Like, is the pressure more on now that Kaprizov's here? And it's like, okay, we know what our path is. Time to deliver. Like, how quickly is he going to be expected to turn this into that contender?
Well, it's a lot better than if the hindsight. Like if this is
Yeah.
the other way around, like they'd be rebuilding from, this is year 3 of a 5-year plan, it would start over again. So I think he said today correctly is it doesn't end here. Like it starts here. This is where you got to continue to build around him, Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, Z Booyam, Gustafson. I'll probably get an extension at some point here during the year. He's probably number one goalie. And they do have some flexibility, even with this Kaprizov signing in coming years, to add. And there's a lot of guys who will be available potentially next summer if they don't sign, right? There's Panarin that's out there. We think Eichel will sign in Vegas. McDavid will probably sign in Edmonton. But, you have flexibility in-season moves to make. And like you pointed out, like great players want to play with great players. And so having Kaprizov as a guy you could say want to play with this guy, I think it'll attract more players to Minnesota with the cap space. And if they go, let's say, win around this year, all of a sudden it's a different look and dynamic to what this franchise is.
Beyond just attracting players that want to play with him, how big of a statement is this just for the Minnesota Wild that a big player did sign? Like it validates the market when like we've heard Russo talk about it plenty that around the league, people kind of look around and say like, yeah, I don't know. Minnesota seems cool, but like, can they win? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, yeah, it is validating for what they're building, what they have, and if he didn't sign, then all of a sudden people are like, if the homegrown guy or the guy that they built around and offered the most money in NHL history didn't want to sign, well, what's wrong with that place? What's the red flag?
Right.
But I think him signing here, obviously, maybe could be the first of more, right? And if he signed and he believes other guys talk around the league, right? But as much as he wants to talk or convince a guy like Tarasenko to waive his no trade clause or whatever, the biggest statement they can make is by winning. And by winning a first round series and doing that and getting that stigma away and getting players on the league to say, okay, if I go to Minnesota or Mini, I can win. And that's the most important thing for most guys, I think, in the career that aren't just trying to establish themselves as NHL players.
And as we talk about that, the roster is getting whittled down. We're starting to see a clearer picture on who might be part of that opening night lineup. Any players that got sent down that I'm not going to say bothered you, but like surprised you, or guys that you thought might get a little bit more of a shake?
I don't think there's anybody that were big surprises. Like I think Lambo's, played well or showed himself well, but I know that the blue line situation is pretty stacked, and there's a chance that Brodin could be back opening night. So like, why would we keep a guy around if he's not going to play in the lineup? You already have Urchek and you have Booyam and everything else. So I think that it pretty much is kind of as expected. There could be some more room if like Nico Sturm isn't ready for the season. He did skate today. He'll be off the next couple of days and come back and skate again, I think, on Friday. But overall, like Hunter Haight being here, not saying a surprise, but it's kind of one that opened your eyes. Like, okay, well, he was on the fourth line today, and he was on the second power play today. Like, interesting that we'll see him in the game on Tuesday night. So he's given himself a chance if Nico Sturm isn't ready to be able to be the lineup. So no real huge surprises, I don't think. Zuccarello being out for a couple months, opens up a spot, of course, and so does the Sturm injury. But the roster was mostly going to be the roster, came into camp basically.
At this point of camp, if it comes down to Yurov or Haight, who do you think makes more sense for night one?
Well, I mean, I think big picture wise, like, Yurov is kind of a big part of the future, they hope. And so I think, people want to see him in the lineup. I do think that potentially Haight right now, in terms of readiness for the role that he would be playing, might be a little more ready, from my perspective, just because he had a year pro in AHL. He can win faceoffs. He can play down the lineup. He could do all power play, penalty kill, and stuff. So that is probably my take right at this point. I mean, you're obviously going to get another chance at the wing tonight or last night, based on this podcast comes out, to see what he can do on a wing with some good players. So that'll be a good test for him as well, because he kind of started as a left wing. So let's see where that is as well. So between him and Ogren and Height were the three young players that were vying for spots, and maybe just two make it, maybe three. But I don't think it's over yet for Yurov as far as like making the team's concerned. But I think Haight has definitely showed himself really well in camp.
And has there been any updated, I guess, gauge on whether or not Yurov is open to playing in Iowa, if that's what the team thinks makes the most sense for him to start the year?
Yeah, like I haven't asked him about that. He hasn't, I'm sure if you ask his agent, he wouldn't be happy to do that, or like would rather him not do that. But Yurov is a great attitude in camp so far. They really like the way he's been willing to learn and understand. He still doesn't know everything yet, right? He's really been a sponge and on nice later practice. So his attitude has been terrific. I don't think you can, for me, I don't think you can make a long-term decision based on a short-term thing, like using my European out clause to go to play in Europe again, just because you may not make the team out of camp necessarily. Because what if they go to him and say, hey, you play the first week in Iowa, we have a long road trip, we'll call you back up, I get a chance, but maybe just get some time there. I don't think he's going to be playing in Iowa all year if he does end up going to Iowa. So I just think the situation, you want to put the guy in the best position to succeed. You don't want to force him in when he's not ready or in the right spot. First confidence is so important. So, yeah, I don't think it's done or decided that he's not making the team or he's going to Iowa. But that will have to be a conversation, I'm sure, if it gets to that point. But I just don't think, from my perspective, you can make a long-term decision about your time with the team based upon one decision like this. This is not how they feel about him long-term. This is not how they feel about him forever. It's just more so, let's see who's ready for the 23 spots in this lineup to play opening night.
Very fair. Two quick ones on the defense then before we kick it over to an extended interview. Awesome time chatting with Eddie Olczyk. On the blue line, you mentioned Jonas Brodin could still make it in for the opening night lineup. What is his status? Like, do we have a good idea of how he's tracking, or is it just kind of loosely speculated at this point?
Well, he's been skating for quite a long time. He's his captain's practices, right? And he's starting to get more involved in team practices. And so, like, he's one of those guys just in his career where he can miss 2 months, do one practice and be back, just the way his body heals, the way he plays, the way he's conditioned. But John Hines today didn't want to close the door on opening night, didn't want to say is for sure going to happen yet, but you're getting more indications watching him and reading between the lines that, he could be ready by then, or he could be ready shortly thereafter. So that's why you don't want to make any big decisions on the blue line or have a guy here when you're not going to play, because if he's here, then he's in the lineup. Then you have Bugio in the lineup, Bogosian or Juracek. And they did start, they're going to have Bogosian play on the left side tonight, maybe later in the week too, with Juracek, to see if one of those guys can play the left side. So it's a left, they have to play together, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that plays out if they go that route where Brodin isn't ready yet.
Makes sense. And then on that, if Brodin isn't ready yet, like, what do you think that the starting six is on defense?
I think you go Faber, Middleton, then Spurgeon, Bouillon, and then perhaps you do Bogosian, Juracek, right? So I think that would be who I would think. We don't have any indication yet that Jack Johnson's making the team. Like, he's on a PTO, you have to sign him to a contract. So I think that if they'll see how this left side works with Bogosian in the next couple of games, but that could be the if scenario if Brodin isn't ready. But it doesn't sound like it'll be very long, unlike a Zuccarello, for example, who'll be gone for the first couple of months.
No, and I mean, you look at the makings of it, though. Brodin healthy and you get everyone else healthy, that is a pretty strong blue line. And we obviously got to see some stuff from Bouillon and Juracek yet this year, but I think there's a lot of optimism to be had around the majority of this roster. I guess we're still just wondering what's going to happen with Ogren, Yurov, some of the young guys on the forward group. But all in all, things are looking up.
I mean, today I think was one of the bigger days or best days in franchise history, quite frankly, if you could think about the long-term ramifications of having him and signing him for 8 years and what it signals and what it shows. And he became for the rest of your career. He talked about like guys like Crosby and Ovechkin playing their entire career with one organization. And it's very rare in all of sports, all of teams. Even Stamkos didn't finish his career in Tampa Bay. You know, Crosby might not finish his career in Pittsburgh, who knows? But like, I'm sure if you're a Wild fan, it's got to be cool to think about him potentially playing for the Wild for his entire career and what it could end up as. So big day for that. And if, you know, the team builds off of the last year's playoffs and Hartman's great year or playoff run, Foligno, barring health, because health is what screwed them up last year, but definitely a good day for the Minnesota Wild organization.
Great day to be a Minnesota Wild hockey fan. With that, let's kick it over to our conversation with Edzo. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order. Joining the show today is a man that, I don't know if any of you are like me, you've all heard him at some point on NHL on NBC broadcast. That's kind of the standard that everyone goes with. But he's got a resume that includes 16 NHL seasons. He's been behind an NHL bench. He's been in sportscasting forever, it seems like. And most importantly, beating the odds with his stage 3 colon cancer diagnosis.